I managed to get an opportunity to apply for a job at co-op, working in the information security team. That was 7.5 years ago now. And since then, kind of my co-op career has kind of grown and grown. And part of my role is to weigh up that we've got to balance the risk of that technology versus the opportunities it can bring, and making sure that we don't put too much control in that stops that innovation from an AI perspective or any other kind of new technology. I guess the co-op also supports things like conferences and networking. A lot of colleagues will attend conferences, but not only just attend them in person, they will be speaking at conferences and are almost coming across as experts as well at some of these conferences. So, that helps highlight the importance of the co-op and how we value colleagues, that we promote that for them to do that.
At the co-op, they're proud to do things in a different way. As one of the world's largest cooperatives, owned by millions of members, community is at the heart of what they do. Since co-op was founded in 1844, they've had a clear social purpose, and everything they do as a business helps to build more value for their member owners every day. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the DevLab podcast. Today, we're joined by Karen Bennett, who is a digital and information risk manager at co-op.
Thank you.
Excellent. So, look, I think a good place to start in any conversation is just finding out a little bit more about you, your journey into technology, and ultimately how you ended up in your current role at co-op. So if you could just give us a bit of flavour of your story today, that'd be great.
Yeah, so quite a squiggly career, really. I originally started my career in the Air Force at the age of 17, so a long time ago, and that wasn't tech related at all. So I did do computer studies. It's the equivalent of GCSE now. So that's the only kind of connection, I guess, to technology. But InfoSec wasn't a massive thing back then. And whilst I was in the RAF and they did classify documents like top secret and secret, there was no kind of technology, information security stuff that went on at that time. Once I left the RAF, my career progressed a little bit more, and I ended up kind of working in Manchester for an organisation that helped the unemployed back into work. So they ran government contracts, so government funded contracts, and data protection and InfoSec at that time started to become a bit more of a thing. I don't know if people recall the government losing some data sets, CDs left on trains. I think in 2007 there was something like 25 million records lost on child benefit payments. All that's just one incident, but all that helped trigger the involvement of information security, I guess, and it started to be a much bigger thing in government, and they tightened up on their information security controls. That included all the suppliers that work for government. So there came a time when we had to look to get ISO 27001, which is a benchmark for security and framework. And if we didn't have that, the business couldn't trade with government. So it was a critical thing that we had to obtain. And I was asked if I wanted to get involved in that. At the time, I worked as a management information manager, so leading a team of kind of analysts that analyse data. So we were dealing with lots of government data. So there was a link there to kind of information security and managing that information. So yeah, over a couple of years, over 3 years, helped the organisation gain 27001. We then expanded that out to a wider remit of sister organisations. And then I managed to get an opportunity to apply for a job at co-op, working in the information security team. That was 7.5 years ago now. And since then, kind of my co-op career has kind of grown and grown. Started looking at information security with suppliers, and then it evolved to risk. And now I lead a team of 8 risk specialists, risk analysts in technology. That's my career.
Fantastic. Excellent. Yeah, no, great summary. And I think what we wanted to do now is kind of focus on a bit more of a granular look into what a day-to-day role looks like for you at co-op. So is there a standard average day? And if so, what does that kind of day-to-day look like?
Yeah, so my day is predominantly meetings. It's like meeting after meeting after meeting. I guess because I've got a team of specialists and analysts that are doing a lot of the day-to-day work. That then my role now is to kind of support that team. But also, even as a specialist and analyst, they have lots of meetings, and their role is really to grab the information from the technology experts, So, some infrastructure or network experts understand where the risks are and what controls we've got in place. And all that is through chatting to people, through Teams meetings and face-to-face meetings. And that helps us to kind of create risk assessments on some of the risks that exist within the co-op. So that's why we have lots of meetings where we're kind of talking to people, gathering information from them, articulating that, going back to them, understanding that, getting people to sign off with that risk or investing in more controls, for example. There's lots of processes we have to follow formally from a governance perspective. So part of that might be going through a risk acceptance process where somebody has to accept a risk that we might not be able to mitigate or have the money to mitigate. And it could be that some of those risks actually fall within our risk appetite as well. So we're comfortable with that. And that's all really what our day entails, is kind of speaking to people and articulating all that and making sure it's clear and transparent to the risk owners and to the co-op what our risks are and what we want to do about them.
I suppose your role extends to working with colleagues outside of technology as well, because, as you touched on, the 2007 leak wasn't a data breach. That wasn't, a hack or anything like that. That was hard copies left on a tube. So I suppose you work right across the whole business.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So like you say, the risks aren't just the technology function or the information security function. It's wider. It's with the business. We need to make sure that the business are following and have the right controls in place, understand the risk, because it's the business that owns some of these risks. If they decide not to do something, it's their risk. It could impact their systems. It could impact their data. And we do have lots of conversations across the business as well as with technology colleagues. Yeah.
Fantastic. Excellent. But I guess focusing in on the technology side, because I know a lot of our listeners out there will be budding technologists, people that are within the IT space. So what are some of the key technology, data, or information security risks that you're facing specifically on that side of things?
So certainly for any organisation, I don't think there's much that co-op specifically face that's any different to any other organisation. Some of the big things that any organisation face will be the risk of cyber attack, and obviously making sure we've got the right controls to mitigate that as much as possible, and monitor for anything that looks unusual on our networks. A lot of organisations, co-ops 180 years old-ish, have got lots of old kits. So whilst technology didn't exist 180 years ago, it's evolved over time, and a lot of organisations have a lot of old kit that we have to manage and decommission. So it's ensuring that we manage the risks associated with all the old kit that we've got as well. But that's the same with lots of organisations. Again, lots of organisations, the co-op included, have risks around how we move from kind of legacy technology to more newer technology such as cloud technology, and with that there are risks as well. So it's not that it's better, but there are also additional risks that we have to manage. We have risks related to third parties. Quite recently, CrowdStrike, Microsoft issues a couple of weeks back. Fortunately, the CrowdStrike didn't impact co-op massively, but they impacted lots of other organisations, and we have to consider risks that any of our third parties may bring to the co-op and understand what technology they're running, what fourth parties they might be using to support their software or their network, and any impacts that might bring to the co-op. I guess some of the newer things that every organisation, again, is looking at, and co-op are looking at this, is AI as a technology, the opportunities that might bring to the organisation, because it can bring lots of opportunities. And part of my role is to weigh up that we've got to balance the risk of that technology versus the opportunities it can bring, and making sure that we don't put too much control in that stops that innovation from an AI perspective or any other kind of new technology. More specific to the co-op, I guess, is an ethical risk that we focus on from a data perspective. And we want to make sure that we do right by members, and we do the right thing. So we do monitor quite closely a data ethics risk to make sure that we look after our member data and our customer data in the right way, and we don't use it in an unethical way. So I guess that's very specific to the co-op.
Yeah, for sure. Look, again, great summary. And definitely topical at the moment. I got hit with the CrowdStrike issue. I had a fun 8 hours waiting in the airport due to all the cancellations and delays. Luckily, mine wasn't cancelled. But no, I think it really brought home to people, the importance of the kind of, managing the risk and the security side of software for sure.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I guess focusing more on the kind of management side of your role. So how do you go about leading a team of risk specialists and analysts? Are there any, I guess, leadership lessons that you could share with anyone out there listening?
I guess there's a difference between a leader and a manager, isn't there? So whilst you need to manage stuff in a kind of, from a kind of, that they're doing the right thing, etc., it's making sure that you kind of lead them in the right way so that you help direct them down the right course of action and support them. Certainly checking in on them with their well-being. Lots with the co-op have hybrid working, we work from home a lot. So, whilst that's a nice thing to do and it suits a lot of people, it also means that people can be very isolated. So making sure that we check in on the team to make sure they're comfortable. We do go into the office and we have team days, and I think people find them quite useful and social. And we try to do that as much as possible and have a little bit of fun, because risk can be quite a dull subject. We in risk quite enjoy it, but it is a dull subject to a lot of people. But it's really important to manage everybody and kind of lead everybody in a way that's appropriate for them. So not one style suits everybody. People have different needs. So it's allowing them to be themselves and to bring themselves to work in the way they want to, and also develop their area of risk in the way they feel necessary, sharing that with the rest of the team. So sharing the best practice that they may have. If there's anything else really that covers from a leadership perspective. I think just making sure that they've got a development to an environment to develop in, that they can grow and learn in the way they want to as well. So I've got members of the team that came in from different parts of technology or different parts of the co-op that are not technology specialists, that are developing more of a technology knowledge from being in the team, and vice versa. I've got people that have come from technology that want to know more about the business and develop that way. So it's working with individuals to kind of lead the team and develop them in a way that suits them.
Fantastic. And I guess if we could just focus in on the learning element. So what are some of the kind of forms that learning takes, can take within the co-op? Is it more, official kind of courses and access to different libraries where they may be able to sit, or is it more immersive learning and working within the team, or a combination of both?
It's definitely a combination of both. So we've got members of the team that have done more formal training from a risk perspective. We've done Microsoft certified training on specific technologies in the past, but we've also do on the job kind of shadowing, immersive learning, whatever they need really. We also have a number of platforms that we can just do quick snippets of learning from. We want to know a bit more about cloud technology to understand it just a bit more. We can jump onto some training on that on a portal and learn in 30 minutes the little bit that we need to know, because we're not the experts in cloud. We talk to the experts in cloud within the co-op. So
fantastic, excellent. And look, sounds like a great culture, opportunity to come in and learn and develop your skills, but also, as you touched on, working in an environment where it's recognized that everyone has different needs, different ways of working, and different requirements when it comes to the flexibility side of things. So that leads us really nicely on to our next question. So you've obviously been with the co-op for 7 years. What is it that's kept you within the business, and how has your role evolved in that time?
So I think I touched on it a little bit at the start. But I started in the co-op 7.5 years ago from a previous information security role, which was quite broad in what I did in my previous role. When I came into the co-op, it was much more focused on third-party information security. So that, and because it was a bigger organisation, bigger information security team, so that enabled me to kind of get more involved in just one information security kind of topic, if you like, in a lot more detail. With any organisation, things change, structures change, and things did change. New line management, and we developed more of a kind of more formal risk team within the information security function, of which I became part of that as a risk specialist. So after about 2 or 3 years, fantastic line management through my whole career at the co-op, in fact. But again, further changes in the organisation, but that suddenly risk within the information security function was looking also at technology risk, so which is very much linked. When we talked about kind of old technology and new technology coming in, that brings with it different information security risks. So it made sense to kind of bring those two risk areas together. So my remit grew to cover technology risk as well. And then another OD happened, another change, and suddenly we were looking after data risk as well, which again is massively linked to information security, keeping data secure and making sure we've got the right controls in place there. So again, fully understand why that happened, and it made it much more joined up. Then there was an opportunity about 2.5 years ago when my line manager left to apply for her role. And I was definitely reluctant at the time, thinking that bit of imposter syndrome. It's a big step up for me. Do I want to do it? Can I do it? And I was encouraged to apply for it, give it a go. And I was fortunate to get the role, and I'm really glad I did, because it's pushed me and it's challenged me that little bit more to the next level, and enabled me to kind of widen my kind of skills as well as a leader. That's part of the reason I'm still at Co-op, because my career has progressed so well, but also because I really value what the Co-op does, what it offers. The member-owned part of the Co-op is really important to me. We're not producing something that nobody cares about. We're helping the community, as well as adding value to colleagues and the community as well.
Fantastic, excellent, and yeah, again, great to hear that Co-op has that progression opportunity, and it's clearly want to give opportunities within the business before perhaps looking to hire externally and things like that. And as you say, fantastic organization in general. I think our listeners would have heard from the introduction around the Co-op, just how involved the members, the colleagues feel within the business, kind of feel like you're part of something, I suppose, bigger than you would in a different type of organization. And I guess to really touch on those, so what are the values of the Co-op that really resonate with you, and how do they align with your personal values?
So I touched on that slightly before, but that kind of democracy of the members choosing what they want to vote, the Co-op spends its money on, is really important to me, that we're not being dictated to by a shareholder or somebody at the top who thinks it wants to go in their back pocket. It's the democracy of the Co-op, the equality of it. Everything that I see at the Co-op is about fairness. It's about making sure we do right for colleagues and we support colleagues in the right way, and that we the development of colleagues, so that we're not necessarily looking externally, we're looking to promote internally and develop internally. And that equality also spans outside of the Co-op to make sure we're working in the areas of the community that need that. We're putting funding into the community where it's needed, kind of through fair trade or anything like that we do. So that kind of equity and fairness, equality, democracy, I think that's really what's important to me, and it's true to kind of my own values. So
yeah, for sure. And look, I think if not entirely unique as an organization, certainly very, very rare to find a commercial organization that takes this approach and has that, democratic structure. So yeah, definitely something that resonates with me, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners out there as well. Again, you have touched on this a little bit earlier when you kind of touched on the flexibility element, and obviously still valuing some time in the office. And I think everyone has kind of come to terms with that idea now that, a well-run organization does value the flexibility and try to offer people different ways of working, but then still sees that value in coming together, for specific activities, whether that be a team meeting or as you said earlier, just to have fun and actually, enjoy the working day. But how would you describe the work-life balance at Co-op?
I think it works really well. There are obviously times when it gets really, really busy and you put in more hours, and at times when it slows down. At the moment, school holidays is quite nice because it's a little bit quieter. A lot of people are on holiday. There's less meetings, which is great. It's probably the same for most organisations, but the balance of being able to kind of work from home really, really helps that. I say probably 2 hours commute on my journey because, I don't have to travel into Manchester every single day, which I used to do 5 years ago, and can't remember how I actually did that 5 days a week now. But it does mean that I get time to actually do things during the day if I need to. I can actually go to the gym more frequently in the evening because I'm not as tired and it's easier to get to. So that kind of work-life balance for me works really well. I wish I'd had this opportunity when my children were younger. Balancing school was always a problem when they were younger. It would be much easier now working from home to be able to do that. But I still get the value of that because my children are older now, and get time to spend with them. If something crops up in the middle of the day, I can generally juggle my diary so that I can do something with them if need be. Take a longer lunch or whatever that might be to get that work-life balance right for me, whilst also ensuring that from a well-being perspective, if I want to, I can go into the office. Do that maybe 2 or 3 times a month and socialise with colleagues, meet colleagues, make sure they're okay, and do the usual stuff we would do in the office. So
fantastic. Yeah. And I think definitely aligns with the way modern organizations are looking to set those working practices and treat their treat their staff for sure, or colleagues, sorry, I should say, in a co-op context. We might have already kind of covered this, so if we have, no worries at all. But so I think, just speaks to your professionalism on the podcast, clearly getting ahead of the questions and covering off a lot of these points ahead of time. But we wanted to delve into how co-op supports personal development and career progression. Is there anything we haven't covered yet that you'd like to highlight?
I guess the co-op also supports things like conferences and networking. The ability to a lot of colleagues will attend conferences, but not only just attend them in person, they will be speaking at conferences and are almost coming across as experts as well at some of these conferences. So, that gives us that helps highlight the importance of the co-op and how we value colleagues, that we promote that for them to do that. We also promote things like apprenticeships. So we have a lot of apprenticeships running at the co-op. I've actually just started this year an apprenticeship myself, a level 7 apprenticeship. I've been out of university for a long time. It's quite different to do that, but it's part of my kind of working week now that I do some of that to gain that kind of level 7 MBA that I'll be doing. And so that the apprenticeship comes across at all levels of the organisation. If there's something you want to do, there's probably something in the co-op that you can look to do, whether it be something small from a personal development perspective or something much bigger over a 2 or 3 year period. So
fantastic. And if we could focus in on your apprenticeship for a second, that'd be great. So how do you feel that's going to help you evolve and develop your skills and develop within your role? Like, how do you feel like you're going to be able to apply this apprenticeship once you've completed it?
I guess from my personal needs, really, is that I wanted to kind of challenge myself. So I was quite comfortable in my role. I get challenged by my senior leaders on risk specific things. But the challenge for me was being able to kind of have that conversation with business leaders as well, that was in the language they understood rather than necessarily just a technical language. So I'm not from a technology background, but you do feel as you work in technology for a long period of time, you start to get that kind of technology word language and jargon. Yeah. So the reason I'm doing my apprenticeship is really to enable me to kind of think outside of technology more. So think about finances, think about strategy for the co-op and how technology and information security link into that and are really important in that process, and be able to have those more related conversations with the business leaders. And that's probably the reason I've done it more, so to challenge myself to be able to do that.
Fantastic. Excellent. And great to hear, even at the senior level that you're at, still challenging yourself, still trying to, evolve and adapt those skills, because, as we all recognize, the learning is never finished, right? So, again, great to hear that, at all levels within the co-op, that's something that people are challenging themselves with and trying to work through. Again, we may have already kind of covered a lot of this, but the kind of penultimate question was around how the field of information security has evolved over the course of your career. And I think, you probably touched on it already in that move towards the digital world and then the data world. But again, is there anything we hadn't covered on that side of things?
Yeah, like you say, I think we covered it a lot in the first part. Just that information security and protecting our own personal information is such an important thing today. I think everybody thinks about it now, as opposed to, maybe 20 years ago, where it was a business thing to worry about. Whereas now we've got Ring doorbells, we've got, cameras in the house and linked to the internet. We need to protect ourselves from all that, as well as things that go on with organisations that we deal with and the businesses that we work in. So it's actually come probably a little bit easier to explain it to people, because everyone's almost immersed in that kind of security, watching out for scams, those rogue phone calls that you might get, and being a bit more mindful about it. So it's almost made it a little bit easier. That lots of people ask questions. Sometimes it makes it harder though as well.
I think that definitely resonates. I mean, I remember when we first brought in like multi-factor authentication within the business. At first it was a bit of an annoyance. I've got to go into my authenticator app and get my code. Now I have it on all of my personal accounts as well, my social media accounts, everything, because, these data breaches do happen from time to time, and you have to be, conscious of that for sure. Final question. And then of course, if there's anything we didn't get the chance to cover, the floor is yours. But could you share some insights for people interested in technology who might not consider themselves technical? And I think, you're a great person to share this insight. As you touched on at the start, didn't necessarily go through the traditional route into technology of a a comp sci degree or anything like that. So yeah, any insights you could share, great.
Yeah, I guess almost every role today involves technology in some form or another. So whether we want to or not, we are using technology, and we know more about technology than we actually think as well, because of our personal lives, because we're doing it every single day. We walk around with a mini computer in our hand that does more than just makes phone calls and sends text messages today. If you lose your phone, it's like you've lost, your bloodline almost. It's the panic mode sits in. Technology roles aren't just around code writing and sitting there looking at a screen with lots of numbers, and there's so much more with kind of business analysts and risk analysts and kind of definitely non-technology related kind of roles in technology that people should consider. And quite often it's transferable skills that are more important than the actual technical skills, especially when you're trying to translate the technology jargon into something that a business user understands. And that's a big part of kind of the role that we do, and a big part of a lot of technology roles.
Yeah, for sure. Couldn't agree more. I think there's a lot of access to learning online now as well, whether it's, YouTube or, more formal courses. There's lots of ways you can pick up these different skills. And often, as you said, businesses are looking for like the right attitude, the aptitude, the willingness to learn. And if you have that and you can start a conversation and evidence that, then, you're giving yourself the best chance of putting your best foot forward.
Yeah,
for sure.
Absolutely.
So that was all the questions I had for you. Is there anything else at all that we didn't get the chance to cover that you did want to cover off before we ended the podcast?
I don't think so, no. I think as long as it went okay, I covered everything.
Fantastic. No, honestly, really, really nice to speak to you today, Karen. I think everyone out there listening is going to be certainly intrigued by a potential of a career at the co-op. Sounds like a great blend of modern technologies, great culture, flexibility, opportunities to progress and learn. So I would encourage anyone out there listening, please check the podcast description. If you're interested in a role at the co-op, then there are all the kind of links and relevant information there you need in order to get in touch. So thank you so much for joining us today, Karen.
Thank you, Phil.
Excellent. And thank you to everyone out there listening as ever. Please remember to like, share, subscribe to the podcast, and keep an eye out for our next episode.